Welcome back. 18 states are suing the Securities and Exchange Commission and its 5 commissioners over what they say is unconstitutional overreach of digital assets. The lawsuit, led by Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman, charges that the Biden-Harris administration's crackdown on crypto companies is unconstitutional because it violates fundamental principles of federalism. Coleman writes, along with conservative AGs across the country, we are fighting to keep the federal government from reaching into Kentuckians' wallets, both physical and digital. An SEC spokesperson responded, saying, quote, while we don't comment on litigation, state securities regulators have been strong partners in efforts to uncover and prosecute misconduct in the crypto markets. Joining me now is the man himself, Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman. AG Coleman, thanks very much for being here this morning. We want to hear more about this lawsuit. What can you tell us?
Well, good morning, Maria. Thank you for focusing on this. Thank you for focusing on my colleagues and I pushing back on a degree of overregulation that we're used to in this administration. You don't, Maria, have to understand blockchain to understand right and wrong. You don't have to understand the nuances of data mining to get this notion of overregulation outside of the constitutional order that we're seeing from the SEC. Congress has not authorized this agency to regulate crypto. Our states are doing a great job in our sovereign interest. You just heard the spokesperson from the SEC concede that the states are doing a good job. But here we have yet another example that old there they go again in terms of this administration overreaching and damaging, limiting an industry that's creating such opportunity, as you've reported several times.
How specifically have they done that, AJ?
So there's uncertainty that's injected into the industry, and uncertainty is what we've seen over and over again from this administration. The notion of rule of law is that you understand what the rules are. This is an agency that's operating based on enforcement. Congress has not given this agency the authority, and I will tell you, the industry itself has asked for clear rules from the SEC. The SEC won't do that. What they'll do is regulation by enforcement, by lawsuit. It's somewhat similar to what we've seen from the Justice Department and the EPA. It is part of a broader picture. But any industry, especially a new innovative industry like this, where there's uncertainty injected by a governmental agency such as the SEC, is limiting investment.
Well, why would they do that? I mean, what is their goal? Is it just this, this attack on business, which has been pretty consistent?
I wish I could understand why this administration puts its finger on the scale of telling me to drive an electric vehicle versus my F-150. Why this administration is putting its finger on the scales of reliable, dispatchable energy in our coal industry and damaging our ability and our national security. It is, it's a head scratcher why their view of government is so different than those of us who took a similar oath in defending the Constitution. They know better than we do. Bureaucrats in Washington know better than we do. That's their mentality, and that is why I'm pleased to be joined by 18 attorneys general in pushing back, including my colleague Mike Hilgers in Nebraska, states that are saying, AGs that are saying enough is enough. We want to protect this industry that's creating opportunity.
Yeah, and of course, that's why President Trump has been talking about this relief that he's going to bring once in office to cut regulations and take the shackles off some of these companies. But I want to move on to China because, AG, you joined a group of attorneys general calling on the federal government to crack down on connected vehicles built in China. You're concerned that the CCP has access to sensitive data stored on vehicle systems, including data gathered from phones. This is something that I've also been concerned about, and I want to get your take on what you think is happening here. If a vehicle is made in China, do they have access, do they have ways of putting surveillance mechanisms in those cars?
Now, Maria, I was an FBI agent many years ago, but I'm not a technical expert. What we're calling on is for those that have the expertise to take a look at this issue. We're calling on the agency within the Department of Commerce to do its job and answer just your question. As attorneys general, we take an oath to go to where the threat is to protect our citizens. And whether it is calling on the federal government in this instance to do its job to protect us from potential spyware, interconnected spyware in these vehicles coming from China, or it's pushing back on what I would say, and do say often, is the most dangerous item in our home, this. And social media, Chinese-controlled social media enterprise that is TikTok, that is an addiction machine. We go to where the threat is as attorneys general.
Yeah, I really want to follow your reporting on this in terms of these vehicles. I want to know more about this, so I hope you'll come back and tell us what you find. But you and a dozen other states are also suing TikTok. You just mentioned this, and their Chinese-based parent company, ByteDance. This lawsuit charges TikTok to be designed to be an addiction machine targeting children. A TikTok spokesperson has responded, and they say this: we strongly disagree with these claims, many of which we believe to be inaccurate and misleading. We're proud of and remain deeply committed to the work we've done to protect teens, and we will continue to update and improve our product. So, AG, what specifically are you referring to?
So that's laughable. As a prosecutor, I deal with facts. And those with me in the TikTok litigation base our litigation on facts. In China, they limit the access to this algorithm to 40 minutes a day to the young people that have access to it. They limit the content of those in China. Their kids can only watch what they call, this is directly from the information we have, what they call inspiring content or educational content. Whereas we know in the United States, it truly is an addiction machine. I'm a dad before I am attorney general, and we see this with our kids, that this addiction machine that is this device that is harming our kids, that is increasing levels of suicide, that is damaging mental health. They target our young people. They target what they call, and here's another direct quote from a TikTok executive that I'd like for your viewers to hone in on. They call our kids the golden audience. The golden audience. Why do they say that? Because the opportunity to monetize here in a small state of Kentucky, in-app purchases in a small state of Kentucky, $240 million last year alone. That is hard to get my hands around, that amount of monetization of our kids' attention, of our kids' eyes. And they go after our kids, Maria, and this is from our discovery. They go after our kids because they are persuadable. They go after our kids because kids persuade other kids, again, monetizing. And they go after our kids, and this is from TikTok, because there's a long runway in which they can monetize and make money off of damaging our kids' mental health. I would encourage those viewing, read our complaint. Now, normally I would encourage you to read a complaint. It's sometimes legalese. Read our complaint.
Yeah, well, I'm going to read the complaint for sure, and I think I'd like our viewers to look at the complaint as well. But look, AG, let me just push back on this for a minute, because, look, you don't have to convince me about bad behavior out of Communist China. We do this every day, and we have a spotlight on Communist China and its behavior against the United States, undermining the United States. But you just said you're a dad. Doesn't this fall on the parent? I mean, can you really say that that's TikTok's fault? Shouldn't you, as the parent and parents out there, have your own rules in terms of how much a child can look and be on TikTok? How can you blame TikTok for this?
It's not zero sum. I have an obligation as a parent to protect my kids. I have an obligation, the Attorney General, to protect those dangerous items that are in my home. This is one of those. And so any parent watching this knows it is like keeping water out of a crack in the floor and trying to keep our kids and limit our kids' access to this. We have to do everything we can to protect our kids, to make parents' jobs easier. It is tough that the kids live and breathe on this device, and that's why it is so insidious, the algorithm that targets these kids. And I will tell you, what we didn't talk about is the use of this to target our kids by those who are attracted to child sexual abuse material. This is a means, TikTok is a means of predators accessing our kids as well, distinct from the Chinese influence. And they know this. They know this. The algorithms are intentional.
Yeah. AG, you're doing very important work. We're going to be following it. We appreciate you joining me today. Thank you, sir.